On this episode of Teeter Talks, I welcome my old friend, Ben Pakulski. He is a former pro bodybuilder who has competed on international stages like the Mr. Olympia, the Arnold Classic, and achieved such great success in that domain and went on to build multiple businesses and has ultimately built a career around serving others and helping others achieve their greatness. He is hyper-focused on longevity, leadership, and legacy topics that matter very much to me. He is the host of his very own podcast, Muscle Intelligence. He's doing such great work in so many ways, and I'm thrilled to have him here today to talk about all the things. You're absolutely going to enjoy this conversation. Tune in to hear Ben Pakulski. Enjoy. Hi.
Hello.
How's it going?
So great.
I've been trying to rack my brain to figure out the last time I saw you, and I don't even know if we can figure it out, but it's been a while.
Yeah. It was probably close to 10 years.
Yeah, but it's so good to see you.
Likewise.
You and I have a friendship like that, where we don't need to talk all the time or see each other all the time, but when we do, we connect on a deep level and have great conversations, and that's exactly what we're going to do today.
Thank you for making this a reason for us to get together.
I know, I'm going to do it more often, drag you out here and record a podcast.
You have to do mine next.
I will. And you have a lot to say, so I want to make sure we give lots of time to talk about all the things. But I'm going to go back. You and I met in university, which was a very long time ago. Seems like a lifetime ago. I was trying to think of my earliest memory of you. And the only one that really comes to mind is you showing up at my house where I lived with 5 other girls with like pounds and pounds of chocolate. Do you remember that? You were dating someone who worked for a chocolate company.
Yes.
And you just showed up with chocolate.
Yeah, totally.
And not like a couple bars, like boxes and boxes and pounds of bars. And we immediately loved you. And that was your ticket in.
Come bearing gifts.
You're no dummy.
In reality, I wasn't dating anyone at all. I just showed up with the chocolate.
This was really your gift.
This is a good reason.
6 girls living in the house, we were quite grateful for that. But that's just kind of you. I mean, I have another memory of you where you came to celebrate Christmas with my family one year.
It was the best.
Do you remember that? And I came to pick you up, and you ran out to my car in the middle of winter with oven mitts and a tray of brownies that you just pulled out of the oven.
I don't remember that. But
they were very hot. And so we put the brownies in the trunk and went on our merry way and had a great Christmas together. But you seem to is that your love language? Do you like spoiling people and treating people?
So personally, I don't like receiving gifts, but I like seeing people happy.
You do. I get that from you. Yeah, especially through food, apparently. Chocolate-based food.
Whatever I anticipate will be like, oh, this is going to be well received.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was very well received.
I was going to bring some wine today, but I wasn't sure where you were.
No, just stick with the chocolate. So, I mean, you're a widely known expert on all things muscle intelligence. When you were competing at your prime of bodybuilding, you're among the top 10 in the world. To me, you're just Benny. But to the entire world, you are absolutely remarkable in what you do. And I've had this incredible perspective on you for the last 20 plus years, watching you evolve from this guy in university that I knew who liked to work out a lot and brought chicken breasts to movie theaters, that's another great memory that I have, to who you are today and all the work you do to serve others. And your work seems different. It seems like you've gone through an evolution, but I also know that very early on in your bodybuilding career, I remember talking to you knowing that wasn't going to last forever. You knew that this physicality and this work that you were doing would have a shelf life to a certain degree, and that you constantly would have to evolve and transform and think of the next thing. And I kind of saw this very physical work that you did very quickly. And I'm not saying it wasn't mental, but you became very cerebral in how you approached your work and how you showed up in the world. And today, you're showing up in the world in a really big way, doing a lot of work that marries body and mind in a really huge way. But let's go back a bit. Tell me about getting into bodybuilding. Was that always the dream? Was that the goal? How did that happen?
I think I needed bodybuilding. I grew up as a very fearful, lonely, obese kid. And the first thing that gave me confidence, the first thing that really made me feel great was the gym. And it happened really by accident. I had never been in the gym. And my baseball coach, I was kind of a highly touted baseball player at 15, and he said, you need to go to the gym and train because it's going to make you faster, because I was being recruited to go play ball in the US. And I'm like, okay. So in typical fashion, like a little hint of OCD, I went every day.
Yeah.
Because I noticed that every time I went, I left feeling better and it made me faster. And I was like, this is exactly what I want. So before every practice or before every game, I would go a couple hours early, train, and then go to the game. And then eventually I started recognizing my body getting bigger. And at the time I was a vegetarian. I wasn't eating any protein.
We're going to come back to that because I recently read this about you on the internet.
Yeah. And because somebody told me it was healthy, right? I just wanted to be healthy. It's like, don't eat meat, it's bad for you. I'm like, okay. And then so at 15, I discovered training and then discovered that I needed to eat protein. So I went back to eating meat. And again, in typical fashion, I was like obsessed. And it was probably 12 months before I really, maybe 12 or 18 months before I really wanted to have anything. I didn't even know what bodybuilding was. I would read fitness magazines and be like, oh, that's gross. I don't look like that. I just want to train for baseball. And then as I started to see myself changing, I was like, oh, I like this. And it helped me overcome my laziness. I believed I was lazy. So I come from a family that never been in the gym, never finished high school, like lots of alcoholism and drug abuse. I don't use that as an excuse, but that's what I knew.
Yeah.
So I thought I was lazy. I was certainly not in great shape. I certainly wasn't particularly healthy, certainly as a kid. So it was almost like bodybuilding is what I needed to overcome my insecurity, my body issues, my fear, my deep, deep fear, which, that's another story altogether. But all that, I don't think there was any other path I could have taken in the world other than like, I'm going to become a bodybuilder. And why I went to such a level is I was very blessed. When I was 17 years old, my dad took me to Mr. Olympia in 1998. And I saw these guys and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And so that became my vision. That became my North Star and my standard. So until I was there, I never once thought about stopping. I was like, until I'm there, I'm just going to keep going. And so you can call that, ignorance, whatever. It's like, I just was like, I'm maybe stupidity. I'm just going to do it. And no one believed in me. I'm sure you'll relate in university. Everyone's like, who's this guy? I'm like, I don't care. I believe in myself and I just know that I won't stop. And for better or worse, I made it. Yeah.
You do have that air about you. It's a wonderful confidence that you have that's very disarming because it's not arrogant. You just show up in the world like this is going to happen. It's just a matter of when. And you talked about your obsession, but I think you're just very relentless when you are committed to something. I don't see anything stopping you.
I don't think obsession. It takes a bad connotation, but I don't think it's a bad word. I think it's like. I think you need a degree of obsession to be successful in anything, right? It needs to be the forefront of your mind. The way I think of obsession is it's constantly on my mind. Like, well, we all have something constantly on our mind, and sometimes it's constructive and sometimes it's destructive, right? So for me, it just happened to be that was my obsession in that phase of my life.
And the first show you did was a Canadian competition, and you won it.
I did, yeah.
So you show up, you get crowned Mr. Canada, for lack of better words.
So the first show was not Mr. Canada, it was 2005. It was like Mr. Brantford.
Oh, okay.
I competed against Johan.
Oh, did you? A mutual friend of ours. Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah, small world.
Yeah. So I won that one and then did another one 6 weeks later and then did well and went to the Ontario's, which would have been maybe eight months later, won that. And then won the Canadians 2 years after that.
And then for the next 10 years, you proceeded to basically get among the top 10 finishes in every competition you entered internationally, including, the Mr. Olympias, the Arnold Classic. And for anyone who's watched the Arnold documentary on Netflix, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really amazing to see what goes into those shows. I mean, it's not everybody who's showing up at those. It's really the most elite, and it's very impressive. And to get there it's the greatest stage in the world for bodybuilders.
When I was in it, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And now having been removed for 8 years, I look back and I go, what these guys do is impressive. I'll say this, I never thought bodybuilding was who I am. It was always what I did. So it was never part of my identity. Whereas I see many of the guys, it's who they are. And I worry for those guys because there's going to be a really hard, same with any pro athlete, right? There's going to be a really hard separation. So I can watch with a really different perspective now with a huge amount of admiration and respect because I know what goes into it. And a little bit of worry, a little bit of empathy, I guess. Like, I hope you're able to see yourself as more than the body.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to a couple podcasts recently, one with Phil Heath and a few other gentlemen of that nature, and this is their life. I mean, their whole life is dedicated to this. Their family's all on board, like the wife's cooking, this was their life for so long. But like I said at the beginning, I felt that you always sensed that this was not your forever. Like that you were so mindful of life after, or how you can do something you love and parlay that into something that helped other people find what they love in and outside of the gym, right? That was your thing that you were good at and you were able to really sink your teeth into. Until this day today, you really work on helping people optimize how they show up. If it's on a stage competing at that level, or if it's, in the boardroom or in their families. I think there's something about you that makes people want to drive. And you were very well respected in that space too. That was one thing that whenever I said I knew you, I loved telling people that I knew you. Even I remember being at the Arnold Classic one year and just getting into conversation with someone. You were very well respected. Where do you think that comes from? Like, because I do think you showed up differently, but where do you think that comes from? Because I sense that was not the case with every single person there.
I would only be speculation if I were to give what I think it could be. I would always say I just let my actions do the talking.
Right.
I wasn't a big talker. Although anyone who's seen the Generation Iron movie, which is on Netflix, I did do a little talking in that movie, but it was asked of me. They're like, will you? I'm like, sure. But like, it's not my nature. My nature is, a story that demonstrates my nature is I moved to California and I walked into Gold's Gym Venice the first time I was going to be there. And it's the Mecca. It's like my lifetime, my childhood dream. And I walk up and I stand outside and I stop. And I was like, I want everyone to know. Once I enter this door, I want everyone to know that I'm the hardest working guy they've ever met. And I didn't ever want to be known for using my mouth or like talking smack. I'm like, I just want them to say he's the hardest working guy I've ever met. And if you talk to anyone that I train with, that would be their response. And so I think that could be it. It's like people appreciate a lot of people talk like, and this, I deserve this and I should have got that. And I'm like, you'll never hear that out of my mouth. I'm like, I got what I deserved and I put in the amount of work that I could, or I was willing to. And my actions did the talking.
Well, you're a highly committed individual. Like, I think we've kind of said this in different ways, but when as an outsider looking at bodybuilding, I see a lot of sacrifice. I see a lot of need for resilience. Do you feel you made a lot of sacrifices during that time, or just par for the course?
So I think sacrifice is part of the process, but it was never a conscious choice. It wasn't like, I feel like I'm missing out. It's like, this is the only thing that I'm wanting to do right now. Like, if I want to go accomplish this thing, nothing else can get in the way. And that was literally a way that I communicated with people. I was like, listen, this is who I am. This is what I do. This is where I'm going. If you want to hop on the train, let's go. It's moving fast. If not, there's the door. And I definitely think I burned some bridges along the way, right? I certainly didn't invest deeply in relationships. I didn't invest deeply in my own personal education many times. So there were certainly sacrifices, but it wasn't always a conscious decision. It wasn't like, I don't want to be nice to these people, or I don't want to be, it's not that I didn't want to be friends with them. It's like, I can't now. And one of my very good friends said, man, success is a fast moving train. And it's like, if you stop at every station along the way to pick up everyone who wants your time and attention, you're no longer a fast moving train.
Interesting.
And I was like, that's exactly it. It's like, once you get there, now you can turn back and go, okay, let me help everyone else along the way, because they all wanted my time and attention going there, but you can't stop everybody. Otherwise, you're not going to go where you want to go. At least that's what my life felt like.
And you're a very successful entrepreneur, business owner. You wear many different hats, many different companies. Do you feel your philosophy is similar in business in terms of train?
Yeah, I think I have a little more perspective now, maybe a little more conscious intention behind my actions, whereas back then it was like relentless and ruthless. And not ruthless from the perspective that I was rude or mean, but just like I didn't have time for anything.
Right.
Whereas now I realize that there's so much more to life than making money or growing the business, whereas if I don't think I would have had the capacity to do that 10 years ago. So I don't think my pursuit of the external now is as aggressive. So that now there's a dynamic balance between the call it the masculine pursuit of more accumulation and accomplishment, and the realization that I'm a human and this existence is limited, and I really want to care for people along the way and create deep bonds, and not because I feel like I need anything in return, but because I feel like I have a lot to give. And I want people to know, I think my mission in life is something around I see what you're capable of so much more than you see what you're capable of oftentimes. And if I can help you reveal that, then you win. Not because I helped, just because that really feels like it hits home for me.
I relate 100%. The language I always use for people is I love teeing people up.
Yeah.
Like I can't swing the bat or the club or however teeing up a sports analogy you want to use, but I love teeing people up to be their best selves.
Yeah.
And there is something about, and I parlay that into parenting. I mean, as a parent, I'm constantly trying to tee my kids up to be their best selves and hope that they see that.
They have to take the swing.
They have to do it. Yeah. I can't do it for them. And even as an executive coach, I can't do the work for my clients, but I can absolutely show them and guide them and kind of prep them so they're ready to go out there and take the swing.
You get as frustrated as I do, not with your kids, but with your clients?
Okay.
Like, come on.
We're going to talk about that because I'm glad you brought it up because you posted something on Instagram a couple weeks ago and it was so raw and honest. And it was like, I wanted to type
filtered.
hell yeah.
You don't even know how filtered that is. You want
so that was
raw.
like not the first edition. Well, you were basically calling out your clients and I don't even need to know who it was, or maybe you were just calling out men in general, but you were like, enough with the excuses. You have to show up for your family. I'm totally paraphrasing, but it was powerful because you and I talked about this earlier, that sometimes with people at a certain level of success in life, and not everybody has people in their lives who are willing to call them out. Having tough conversations with people and being honest is required, but it's so rare. It's such a rare trait. And I so admire that you were calling people out who I guess don't often get called out. And you were really forcing people to reprioritize what really matters to you. Like, are you going to be a man of excuses or are you going to actually do something about it?
So I hear a statement often, and it's funny because it's actually been repeated by multiple people who are like, you see into my soul. And I was like, yep.
I do.
Yep, I do. You can just see when somebody's expressing all of who they are versus somebody who's putting up a front or a mask and like fooling themselves and attempting to fool everyone else. And I think that, I don't know if I think that's normal. Everyone can see that, but that's something I do a lot of times for my clients, my friends, my coaches, like holding you to a higher standard than you're willing to hold yourself. And it hurts. And sometimes people don't like it, but I think everyone needs it. And that's the relationships that I value most for myself. When somebody's being like, hey, what's that? And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah. And do you have a lot of those people in your, because I look around my life and I'm like, I need more of those people who are really going to give it to me straight.
I have one, and the way that I met him, or the way that I connected with him, well, I won't give you the whole story, but he really called me on my stuff in front of a really big group. And I was like, and I reached out the next day. I was like, how can I hire you?
Yeah.
And I've hired him for 2 years now, and like he's coaching.
That's amazing.
He's become a very good friend. We're partnered together in business, but I still pay him because I'm like, I just want you in my life.
Yeah.
Like people who are willing to be honest, it's just so rare. Like if I see you playing small, if I see you doing something that's repeatedly happening, like that's it. And not everyone's willing to shine the light on the dark spots, I
love that. Let's be that person for each other. I need someone like that in my life.
We should.
Because I do this for so many people, and then I'm like, I need someone to do that. I think we all need that. Who is actually calling us out in the most constructive, loving way, but in the most honest way? I say all the time, the most rare quality, and we talked about it earlier, is being able to have a tough conversation with someone. And tough conversation doesn't mean you're delivering bad news all the time, or you have to, it ends terribly. In fact, it's the art of saying what needs to be said in a way that someone hears you, I think.
And I think there can be a preemptive conversation, a dialogue that says, hey, okay, I'm willing to do that for you.
Right.
When I see this coming up, how would you most like to receive it? Just ask.
Yes.
Like how do you feel like you would receive that feedback best? Because not everyone, like you can tell me anything and I'm like, okay, got it. I'm like the guy who made his living on stage in his underwear.
Right.
That's
got to build some character.
Right. You're like, oh, everyone's calling you all these different things. I'm like, man, whatever, just give it to me, right? Or some people like a little, like, the sandwich method. I'm like,
just warm me up a little.
Tell me I look great, and then you can.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, whatever. You know.
So true.
Yeah.
It's a good takeaway for people in business and in life is to make sure, do you have someone who's telling you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear? And are you listening to them? Are you giving them space? Or to your point, have you guys found a way to, because it may not be a formal relationship, which is why you and I both believe in coaches, but formal relationships are great. But if you don't have a formal coach, find someone in your life who can be that person for you.
Yeah. Some people like it privately, which I've learned.
Right.
And I tend to just be like, here it is. It doesn't always go over well. And so I've actually been able to identify, so do you know predictive index?
No.
Predictive index is like a personality assessment.
Oh, okay.
So I use this with all my team, and I can determine by their predictive index profile how I should dialogue with
Yeah.
them. So some people on a leadership call, you're like, hey, you're doing this wrong, stop doing that, or you need to do this better. And some people, they just go,
Right.
like, oh, damn, wrong person.
Wrong person, wrong way.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, part of it, being a leader, is finding a way that people will connect with what you're saying and absorb what I call it kind of love languages. I think there's leader languages.
Totally.
Right? Like how you show up a leader for this person is different than how you show up for this person. Kind of like parenting. There's always those parallels, right? Like sometimes we have to be different people, different parent types for our children because they're different people.
Parenting is the greatest teacher. Oh, gosh. Such a great teacher. Gosh.
And honestly, the only people that are telling you if you're doing a good job or not are literally your children.
Yep.
Like they will give it to you straight
100%.
all the time.
Yeah.
So before we dive into what you're doing these days, which I'm immensely fascinated with, when you look back at your bodybuilding career and you look back at that young teenage kid who was in the gym working so hard, what kind of advice would you give younger Ben that maybe would have helped you at that time? I know you're not really a guy of regrets, so I'm not going to go in, do you have any regrets? But what kind of advice do you think would have been helpful to hear at that time?
So the only thing that came up for me was, and I tried to do this, was specific to my context was, if you're talking to anyone pursuing an Olympic level athletic endeavor, we don't always consider repercussions.
Right.
And I don't think I would have taken this advice, but always like consider all of the variables. For example, most athletes would say, I'll do whatever it takes. And I did whatever it takes. Mm-hmm. And looking back on it, I would strongly dissuade anyone who was in my position from doing whatever it takes. And in my case, it was the use of anabolic steroids. Could I have done it without them? No. But if I would have had someone who, like a male role model in my life, to be like, what should I do? Like, I'm not sure. I don't know what to do. I was just doing what everyone else was doing. And I was like, oh, this is what I must have to do. So instead of questioning the path that everyone else is taking, I just did it. Yeah. And I wish I had had a great male role model to go, okay, I understand where you want to go. And I'm not going to tell you not to do it, but let's have a conversation about this. Like, what does this look like for you in 10 years? What does it look like for you in 2 years? Do you know how to come off? Do you know how to go on? Do you know how to take care of your health as well? Because I don't think anabolic steroids are as bad as everyone makes them out to be. I just think when they're abused, they're bad, like everything. And so there's millions of men around the world using anabolic steroids who never have any health repercussions. But many people who are using it to an extreme are going to die.
Yeah. And
sometimes there's a genetic component, sometimes there's, bad things, like bad substances. So I wish I would have had that advice, and I didn't. And maybe part of the reason I do what I do now is to give back to anyone who's younger than me. I'm like, if I can provide any perspective, and most often I'll ask more questions than I'll give answers. For sure. But that would be something, because what I realize is sometimes you make a decision without considering how it's going to affect you long term, and sometimes there's an indecision that you make. You're like, I'm deciding not to do something, and that affects you forever, right? Sometimes people right now are paying for decisions they made a long time ago, and at the time it wasn't even really a thought. Like I didn't even know there was a possibility. Beds. Right, totally, been there. Yeah.
You raise such a strong point, because I think, and from a woman's perspective, I think of all the diet pills I put in my body in my 20s. Like the amount of, if you told me it would make me skinny, I probably put it in my body at some point, or did the crazy thing. I mean, I think living with 6 women in a house in university, the cabbage soup diets, like name it, it went through the house in some shape or form. Crystal Light, like we could have been a sponsor for Crystal Light, the amount that we drank.
But nobody said like,
but
hey,
no one stopped
that may not
us.
Be good for you.
And honestly, we came from a generation where our moms were doing Weight Watchers, or our dad, like it just, there was no, and I'm not blaming our parents, but I do think at some point it needs to stop, where kids, I know you and I talked about this earlier, learn to take care of themselves and somehow understand the long-term
Would you have listened? Like, oh God. It's a values conversation, right? Because you guys at the time, thinking back on it, were some version of very successful, very confident. And if someone came along and said, hey, that's not so good for you, like, would you have listened? And the answer is probably not. I would have probably blown somebody off. But it would be nice that in hindsight there was somebody there who you could be like, hey, I'm not trying to tell you what to do,
Right.
but can I ask you a few questions about that? Yeah, sure. Have you ever considered that maybe it's not good for you? No, I haven't. Okay. I'm not telling you it is bad for you, but maybe you could look at it. Maybe
Right.
just like have a thought, like do a little research, ask some questions. The reality is Crystal Light may have been like, oh no, it's good for you. Just like smoking was awesome for you in the 50s and 60s.
Right.
But at least you would have been thinking critically rather than just mindlessly following.
Yeah, the critical thinking element is critical. But I also think sometimes as parents, finding the right resources for your kids is important too. Like they may not listen to me, but maybe if I can find the right resources for them, who knows?
I call myself a facilitator. I'm not a parent. I facilitate.
I like that.
That's all I do. I'm
Put
like,
that one on
if
my
you want to do
resume.
this, I'm going to facilitate. It's like, well, you're putting them in the right place,
Yeah,
right?
it's true. So throughout this period of time, obviously you learned the right and wrong ways maybe, or even for yourself, you figured out what worked. I mean, I think you're watching you from a distance or even up close, what your training habits, your eating habits have evolved. And today you got yourself to a place where you have all this knowledge. You've learned about nutrition, you've learned about fitness, you learned about mindset, which to me, I think bodybuilding is, I mean, just as much mind as it is body, in my opinion, watching the dedication and the resilience that's required. You've taken all of this, and today you are focused on helping men show up better, be better, to build stronger families, stronger lives, better businesses. Talk to me about what you're up to today, because it's absolutely fascinating. And as a woman, I mean, I mentioned this to you, I have a lot of men in my life that I care about, who I want to be taken care of. I want them to be their best selves. I want them to be strong and healthy and feel good about what they're doing. So I'm excited to see you super focused on this. But I want to understand how, like, what was your journey to this place, and what is it exactly that you're doing?
Yeah, so as you can imagine, along the journey, many men have said, hey, could you help me? And sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes some percentage of them succeed and they follow through and they change their life. And a larger percentage doesn't succeed and doesn't follow through and doesn't change their life. And they end up in the circuitous loop of the same things as they've always done. So I start going, okay, well, what do I do with those people? Like, and so many coaches are like, well, it's their fault. I'm like, no, it's your fault. You're a coach and they're paying you to coach them. So find a way to get the result. So if I take personal responsibility for someone else's success, it opens up this door of possibilities of like, okay, well, what do they need? Because they may not need a workout. They may not need a nutrition plan. They may not need lab work. They may not need hormones. They may need something different. So then I start looking, okay, well, what is it that most men need? Is there some small number of things that most men are struggling with or most women are struggling with? And so you start opening these doors of like, well, maybe I should start studying human dynamics and psychology and behavior change and all these different things that go into helping goal setting and achievement and helping somebody set a goal, follow through, set a goal, follow through. And so I started doing a little more of that and started getting a little more success, but still it was mediocre. And then I started sitting with myself and going, okay, well, while these are all nice objective things and it makes me feel all warm and fuzzy that I get to help people, why am I here, right? What is my true mission in this life? What do I really want to solve in this world? And so that shifted things a little bit. So while I started developing this skill set of helping men, you know, and any human really to change their health and change the way they look and the way they feel and the way they perform, it evolved into, okay, well, what's the problem I'm here to solve? And to be honest, I don't even know that I have clarity on that. But where I know it exists and where I had the greatest amount of pain as a kid was the absence of a family unit, the absence of, I don't want to like throw anybody under the bus, but like the absence of a male role model, the absence of a dad who, my dad was there sometimes, but he didn't know
He did the best he could.
He did the best he could. He didn't know how to support. He didn't know, there wasn't anything that I needed there, right? That's a big thing for me. So it's like, well, what does that mean? And so it evolved to, I really want to support. And so the first thought was, well, I want to help kids. I don't want kids, because I was the most afraid kid in the world, because at 7 years old, I was like, well, go figure it out.
Yeah.
I'm like taking the bus and the subway in Toronto at 7. You're like, what? And like, yeah. And so I was very afraid. I was afraid I was going to get hit by my parents. I was afraid I was going to get like kidnapped or whatever. So there's so much fear that just lived in my nervous system. And I was like, well, I want to help kids, because I don't ever want have kids to feel the way I felt, or to be lonely, or to be, I don't know, whatever the all those emotions, right? To be abused. And so, well, I thought that was it. I was like, what? You can't help kids, right? Like, how do you help just kids unless their parents have left? And it's like, the solution is, we'll help the parents. So how can we help the parents to first love themselves to then be able to give back to their kids, which requires a high level of consciousness, a high level of self-awareness, a high level of self-respect. Like, well, that's what I want to work on, like helping men develop those things in themselves so that they can have the energy and confidence to go back to their own children, and the security, the personal security, and personal respect to go back and go, oh, I brought this little angel into the world. I think children should no longer be called children. They should be called angels. Because these little humans are sent here to give you something, to give you a message, to bring you something in your life. If you're willing to see it, if you're willing to receive it. And so my kids, not only have they saved my life, literally, they've given me everything. And I didn't give them anything except for life, right? They've given me everything. So if parents can take that perspective and go, I owe it to them, I owe it to myself, but I owe it to them to become the best version of me that I can, so that I can support them to become the best version of them I can. So my mission is somewhere in the middle of like developing myself to be the man, the partner, the father, the leader that they need to thrive and not have to suffer the way I did. And as I go through that, I encourage men and women to do the same. Yeah. Take responsibility for the things in your life.
As you're talking, all I keep thinking is it blows my mind till this day that there's no course you have to take to have a child, right? There's courses you have to take
you failed.
To drive a car, but no, here's a baby. I send you home from a hospital, and
but imagine the uproar.
Luck.
Imagine the uproar. Like, like you're not allowed to do the most biologically like evolutionary
before
thing.
you do what you're about to do. Let's But I tell people all this all the time, and it's an interesting thing for moms, and I'm sure as a dad you feel it too. Is I'm not defined by being a mom. Right? I am a lot more than just a mom, but there was something that happened to me when I became a mom. There was something that gave me this ultimate perspective, ultimate responsibility, this ultimate desire to do better and be better for my kids, right? So it's, yes, I want to be a great mom to them and raise great humans, but to your point, what I am getting back while doing that, like when you're helping other people be their best version of themselves, and I say this as a parent, I say this as someone who's been a leader in a corporate space for 20 years, and obviously you and I love helping other people. You get a lot back when you do that for other people. So there was definitely a shift in me when I became a mom, and the purpose and the perspective. And again, I'm not just a mom, but I also see the power in how it transformed how I show up in the world. And I'm grateful for that, because who knows, I may have gotten here anyways, not having kids, but I highly doubt it, because to be so hyper-focused on someone else's well-being is immensely powerful. And it doesn't have to be your children. I mean, you could have other people in your life that you care for in that way. And, you and I talked earlier about chosen family, right? People who are aunts and uncles and neighbors and friends and family who kind of create this family unit that so many people need to get through this world if they don't have that bio family. But
what it sounds like to me is there's me-centered consciousness, there's we-centered consciousness, and then there's global consciousness, right? So most people go through their whole entire life with me-centered consciousness. I need to get through, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? I need the lowest level on the totem pole, just make sure like I have what I need to thrive, to survive.
Right.
And then eventually you solve those problems and you're like, okay, well now maybe I have some bandwidth to have we-centered consciousness where I can think about a partner or a family or a small subunit of people. And that maybe most people end there. And then some people have the opportunity to evolve past that to global consciousness, right? Yeah. And so I think that's probably what children have done for me, because literally, as I say, they saved my life. The only person in the world that mattered was me, right? When I was doing bodybuilding, the only thing that mattered was I'm going to do that thing, and there was nothing that was going to stop me. And so the evolution that children brought was like, oh, there's something outside of me that not only am I responsible for taking care of, but I get to take care of. I get to learn about this. I get to give all this love that I know I have inside.
Yeah, I agree. That's very well said. Do you, because I'm fascinated with leadership. This is a podcast about leadership. How would you describe yourself as a leader in terms of how you show up? You're going to have to talk about yourself.
It's all an evolution, isn't it? Yeah. So coming from a space where I was always the most important thing, moving into a business that like I'm still kind of the most important thing.
Yeah.
I tried to make, and I use that word on purpose, I'm learning to make other people the priority and not myself. And so the word benevolence comes up a lot. It's like, I just want you to know that I care about not just the job, not just the outcome, but the person. And so the first thing I'll ask in any job interview is like, tell me what you love. People are like, what, why? I was like, because I want to learn about you. And if we're a value alignment, checkbox one, like we have a value alignment, that's great. That means we'll probably work together, at least at some level well. And then it's like, well, do you have the skill set, right? And then, so we work down kind of that way. But so I think first thing is, I want to know that I can care about you. I want to know that you're willing to receive that level of care. And so I'd say leadership for me starts with one of our values in the business is authentically care. So everyone that comes into our world, I need you to know that we care, because chances are I'm going to care about you and your results more than you care about you and your results in many cases. And I take that personally. I'm like, okay, like you are enlisting me to take and hold some of the responsibility for your health and well-being. And I accept that. So by taking money, I'm like, I accept that. I'm willing to hold some of this responsibility. You still have to hold some too, but I can hold some until at some point I can give it back to you. So I would say that is the foundation of leadership for me is, benevolence. And then the other side of leadership that I kind of toggle with is what I'm learning. And this is going to sound maybe terrible, but the other side is dictatorship. And so I'm learning to play with that. So so it's so, I don't think it's right, but it's current. So it's like, I care about you. Now go do this. That's where I am right now. Right. Well, that's where I am now. I need this by Friday. Yeah. And because previous to this dictatorship, and I'm not saying I've landed in the right place yet, but previous to this dictatorship, it was always like, I lean too far in the direction of like caring. I'm like, so you're creating this great dynamic. We really care about people, but people aren't getting their job done. Right. So I was like, okay, how do I mesh these two together? I need you to know I care, and I need this done by Friday. Right. And currently, that's where I sit, and that's the scope of my, at least in my internal team, how I'm leading. That being said, there's also a role of leadership that I take on in my family, and there's also a role of leadership I take on with my clients, and those are different. So with my family, it's say as little as possible, do as much as possible. So it's like, I just want, lead with my word, lead with my actions, not with my words. And with my guys, it's both. It's like I have to be a physical embodiment of what I say I do, and I need to teach them the path, right? So it's interesting. I kind of have 3 leadership hats.
I love all of those, by the way. Do you feel, and you kind of mentioned at the end about the embodiment, you talked about leading with your actions. Are you, because I'm the type of leader where I have to lead by example. I don't have to do everything that I'm telling you to do, but I'd have to be willing to do it if I'm telling you to do it. And there's an analogy that I love about, a leader is like a conductor of an orchestra. You don't have to know how to play every single instrument, but you need to know how to make amazing music and bring your people together to create harmony. Because I sometimes in my life would get caught on the fact that I couldn't play all the instruments. Instead of understanding that was not my gift. My gift was to help people play beautiful music and be able to bring multiple people together to create harmony.
Love that.
You love that? Okay, because I constantly have to go back to that, because sometimes I get stuck on the fact that I can't play a specific instrument, or I'll be coaching someone that maybe works in an industry or does a job that I've never done, and I think, okay, can I still help you if I can't fully relate to what you're going through? And then you realize, well, of course I can, because my job is to connect with the person and the human, and and the commonality when you start working with people is unbelievable, but I focus on making the music.
Like when you're coaching, you almost never coach the business. You almost always coach the human, right? Like you're experiencing a personal problem that's causing a bottleneck over there. Let's figure out what that personal problem is, and let's move you through the bottleneck, because you're going to know the solution on your own once you remove your personal block. Yeah,
and I love that your approach is so holistic, because I too, in my coaching, I don't dive as much into the physical stuff as you do, but when I work with my clients, inevitably, we end up talking about their sleep, their nutrition, what they're doing to take care of their bodies. I'm a big believer that, to go back to this definition of success, which I seem to tackle with many of my guests, is I don't think you can thrive in business and let every other area of your life fall apart. That's not successful to me. That doesn't impress me. I don't think that's sustainable. I don't think that's success. The same thing where it's, you make all this money at the expense of everything else. I think success is being able to thrive to a certain degree in all areas, like the synergistic approach to how you show up in life and being fairly successful. And I'm using air quotes when I say that, in all areas. So when I'm coaching individuals, and if we get talking about their business or their performance, or, I would say more business driven results, I always bring it back to, and they want to work more, they want to perform more, they want to do better, or don't have the energy to do it, or they're burning out. I'm like, well, rewind. Are you sleeping? And they kind of look at me and go, what do you mean, am I sleeping? Because I don't think you can have one element of success without all of the others. I think it takes away from it if you have to throw everything else out the window to achieve that one thing.
Yeah. And what comes to mind as you say that is energy, work, and love. Yeah. And those are kind of three boxes that a great friend and mentor of mine, Brian Johnson, suggests that I use. It's like, how am I showing up? How am I when I'm showing up, or who am I how I'm showing up on my energy best? Like when I'm really thriving, it's like, well, I'm a gold medal winning athlete. I'm showing up with the energy to spare. Like I've got a vibrant vitality, right? And so define that. And then who am I when I'm at my love best? Well, I'm a romantic lover, or I'm a caring, connected, present father, or whatever, right? You define it. You're like, well, how are you showing up compared to that? And so you can identify whatever areas are important to you, and then define who you are at your best, and then look at it every day, right? Because if it goes every week, it's too long. If every day has to be there. So how did I do today in those three areas? And obviously work, did I do what I need to do to lead my team? Did I do what I need to have a great vision? So you have energy, work, and love. And
I like that.
Yeah, so it simplifies it, but it's like, well, for me, those are probably the three biggest pillars. And love is obviously family and community and whatever you want that to mean. But I always want to compare myself against my best. Like, was I an 8 out of 10 today? Was I a 3 out of 10 today? And you got to be honest. And that's hard, painful, but simple. So I think that's a useful way for people to, one, identify what you value, and then ask yourself, am I living in alignment with those values? So many people are not, first, aware of their values, two, living in alignment with them. And when I discovered that, which by the way was Dr. John DeMartini, who I told you about, I just created this value hierarchy, and I was like, okay, I know how to make decisions now, right? Because sometimes you're making decisions, you're like, should I do this or should I do this? That's no question. I know what my hierarchy is. So like, if it comes down to like, should I spend time with my family or should I do this? Well, I know what's important to me, and I make decisions based on my value hierarchy. And that's been really useful for me, using my objective mathematical brain. I'm like, I want to have objectives. I want to have, criteria, rather than sitting there with a piece of paper and like figuring out things. Sorry, I'll stop rambling.
No, I love that. And as you're talking, I'm thinking, what a great exercise to do as a person, to figure out what your values are, and to really not just throw some beautiful words on paper, but to really understand how you bring those to life. What a great exercise to do as a couple. Like, what are our values as a couple? What a great exercise to do.
Before you get married.
Well, it's too late now, so we'll do our best. But, or what about as a family? What are our values as a family? Right. How do we bring those values to life as a family?
Support everyone. Yeah.
And then even business, right? And I think businesses will put up those like mission statements on the wall, the values, and the words look pretty. And half the time, most businesses have the same words. But I dare people to really go and find the words that actually bring it to life, so they can bring all their decisions back to those values.
It's not easy.
Yeah, no, it's not, because generally you can find something that you think meets a couple of your values, and then you're still forced to pick, or it's very obvious, but it's still a hard decision to make in the end, because the right things are generally the tough things. So.
Yeah, maybe. I guess it depends.
I have found that.
Yeah, I think the right things are maybe it's a standard. Maybe it's like, I don't have to do it perfectly. I just have to do it.
Well, this is why making a salad is so much more difficult than opening a bag of chips, because it's the right thing to do on some days.
Some days.
So I would be nuts having you here, not asking you a bunch of health-related questions. And I'll put a big disclaimer for anybody listening that, everyone has to do what's best with them and check with their doctors, but you are a wealth of knowledge. And in my life, I have been so fortunate to benefit from your knowledge. I mean, we trained together at one point. I don't think I paid you a penny, but you were so kind to just hang out with me and train me. Supplement protocols and things like that. I've had a lot of conversations with you about it when I was going through my pregnancies or had issues. You were a great source of knowledge. So again, insert all the appropriate disclaimers here, but talk to me. I'm a huge fan of supplements. I have been for many, many years. I live with someone who alternatively says I have the most expensive urine because he's not a huge fan of supplements, but we slowly have them coming around. What are your top 3 supplements out there? And maybe they're different for men and women.
It's a tough one.
Or 5 or however many.
So let me preface. The way I think of any intervention when it comes to health, performance, fat loss, every intervention is a lever that I can pull. Some levers are really big, make big differences. Some levers are really small. Supplements in general are small levers, except when you have a deficiency.
Right.
So if I have a deficiency, then supplements can be massively important, provided they're high quality natural supplements. So blanket statement, supplements are not ubiquitously great for everyone. Like more supplements is not great. I know there's so much marketing because it's a multi-billion, probably $1 trillion industry by now. So much marketing saying, oh, you need this for this. And there's no validity behind probably 80 or more %. So I caution everyone, like, and my lady is the same way as you with like, let's have everything we need in our supplement cabinet. And I was like, no. Like, hold on a minute here. You're going to pass that through me next time.
It's like a weird comfort blanket, but that's okay.
Well, I understand why.
Yeah.
Like, we want to thrive. We want to hang on to our youth and our beauty and our energy. And it's nice to have something that's just like, I can just take this pill and I'm going to get all these benefits. Yes, probably not, right? So probably not.
Yeah.
So that being said, my suggestion for everyone, as you said, is like, go get a test.
Right.
Get a blood test, get a urine analysis. An organic acid test is a great tool. Microbiome analysis, you can do something called a GI effects. And so you can go like, well, what is my blood doing? What is my metabolism doing? My metabolome from my urine analysis, and then what is my microbiome doing? And you can look at all 3 levels. And if you want to get really granular, you can look at your epigenetics. And epigenetics are a fantastic way of looking at the influence or the marks left by your life up to this point. So anything you've done up to your life up to this point there'll be some genetic, or there'll be some mark left on your genetics, so we can tell which SNPs, so basically what genes are influenced the most or have been expressed the most. And it's really useful to go, hey, this area in your life for some reason is stressed. We need to support that supplementally, right? So rather than just like saying, hey, whatever I see on Instagram today because some influencer said it's great, maybe it's great for them, but maybe not useful for you. So Jeff's right and wrong, right? And so you're right and wrong. But it doesn't, we don't know.
It's fair.
But the best way, my suggestion is everyone should do a full, executive health analysis every year, once a year, and run that protocol for 6 months and say like, hey, I know that I'm deficient in this, or I know that I've got this area of my life that's stressed out, and I'm going to support that. And oftentimes you'll find that it repeats over a year, because oftentimes your deficiencies are not environmental. Sometimes they are, but usually they're genetic. So, or dietary or something, right? So your habits will create some deficiencies that you can ultimately support supplementally over years. So that doesn't answer your question, but I will answer your question. I'm going to give some surprising answers. The first one's not surprising, magnesium. I think everyone should take magnesium. I'm a big believer in collagen, and I think everyone should be taking collagen at some level, unless you're eating organ meats. And the other one that I think is the surprise is going to be creatine. And I think coming from a bodybuilder, people might expect that, but I give it to my children, everyone up to my grandma, who's 87 years old. Everyone should be taking creatine because it's incredible for your brain. It's not just incredible for energy. So it's a primary energy source. It's incredible for your brain, but it's also incredible for your nervous system. So I would strongly suggest that most people supplement with creatine. There's an enormous amount of data. Don't take my word for it. Go look it up. On the brain and nervous system benefits of creatine. So for high performers, I'd say most people are on 3 to 5 grams a day. You can give your children gummy bears that have no sugar, gelatin. So you're getting gelatin, which is collagen, and you're getting creatine together. And you can, kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
I like that. I am taking all 3 of those things.
Yes.
There's a lot of research that shows the benefits of creatine for perimenopausal and menopausal women. There's interesting studies. Energy production, focus, a lot of mind-related stuff, which was really interesting. Well, thank you I didn't think you'd answer that question.
I'll answer any questions.
I know it's tough, but I think the reality is that if we can just get people thinking about doing these tests and looking at their bodies differently and understanding that they could have deficiencies or there's other things. And as we get older, a lot of people, we talk about our sleep, right? And I hear so many people taking all these things for sleep, and I cringe and I think, have you seen a doctor about that? Number 1, have you seen a naturopath about that?
Right.
Number 2, There's so many other things you could be doing before jumping to maybe some of these solutions that are not great.
So
sleep
collagen is the reason I suggest collagen is because it's loaded with glycine. And glycine is incredible for blood sugar control and sleep. So collagen is not just for like your hair, your skin, your bone, and your nails. It is, but it's also beneficial for sleep and glucose tolerance. So the way your body uses nutrients.
I have a million questions I want to ask you about different. Well, maybe I'll ask you this question. What does biohacking mean to you? Because I hear that word everywhere, and I feel like it's like wellness 2.0. I don't know. It's like
so what it means to me is someone's looking for a shortcut in their life.
Yeah.
A shortcut to do something useful with their body. And as you'll know, there's no shortcuts, right? I think, there's no shortcuts in physiology, and there's no free lunch in physiology either, which means when I take one thing, it's probably doing something else as well. Right. So I'm not a big advocate of the word biohacking. I know it's ubiquitous in our industry. But in general, it's someone's looking for a shortcut to create some type of shift in their biology, right? Or in their physiology. And the concept, I'm not opposed to, but the way people are doing it is getting a little out of hand. Like people are, I think it's just like at the wrong mindset. I want to find the fastest path to health. Well, how about the consistent, steady, stable path? Just like do the basics, right? Get morning sunshine, sleep well, eat great food. Like all of that supersedes biohacking. And I mean, you can get into some incredibly weird things that are happening in the biohacking space that, are they useful? Probably not, right? They're a very short acting fad. Everyone's like, oh, this is the greatest thing in the world. Right. And then 2 years later, you're like, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I caution people with that. There's some people out there now who are definitely charlatans who have really big audiences selling things for way too much money. I'm not going to throw it under the bus, but just be cautious.
It's kind of like what we talked about earlier, this idea of if you're going to do something major, you and I were talking about an ayahuasca potential thing as something someone can do. And again, we're not promoting that here today, but if you're going to do anything major in terms of an intervention or some sort of biohack, you almost need a pre and post plan for how you're going to do this. I mean, you can lump, people who are taking Ozempic or people who have tried any type of biohack. I'm not sure if we would lump Ozempic into that specifically, but you need a plan for how you're going to prepare to lead into this thing that you're going to do and how you're going to work yourself into a lifestyle to maintain and to kind of the post whatever hack you're doing, integrate it, right? To make it more realistic for a longer lifestyle choice. Yeah.
So anyone, as you're saying, plant medicine, the thing that comes up is, well, do you meditate? And if you don't meditate, maybe plant medicine is not for you. And if you are meditating, maybe then the first step is like a Vipassana, like a silent retreat, like go 3 days and don't talk. And you'll often get the answers you're looking for there. People are like, oh no, that sounds hard. Yeah. But the benefit you're looking for is on the other side of your discomfort.
Right.
And so rather than just going for the short fixed pill, like, well, have you done a meditation retreat? Like, no, we'll start there. Yeah, that would be a good place to start. As far as something like Ozempic, worth mentioning, because I know it's an enormous thing right now. Like, I seriously caution people, if you're doing it already, find a doctor who knows what they're doing, which is much fewer than I realized. So 2 things observationally right now with the millions of people doing Ozempic. One, your heart rate shoots up 20 to 25% immediately, resting heart rate. So it knocks you out of deep sleep for weeks. So one injection, it's going to knock your heart rate up by 20 to 25% for weeks. Wow. So if your resting heart rate is 50, it's going to 70, 65, 70. That's a big bump. So because your heart rate's not coming down, you're not getting as much deep sleep. That's a big problem. It seems like it's happening with most people. The second one, long-term use, is slowing down peristalsis through the stomach, so the emptying of the bowels. Well, the problem with that is you're going to have the accumulation of bacteria that aren't supposed to be sitting in there, putrefying, supposed to be moving through. They're putrefying, you're going to have bacterial overgrowth and dysbiosis and many different gut issues. So anyone who's taking Ozempic, you got to consider that stuff. So increasing your water intake, increasing potentially your fiber intake, but that could be tricky as well. Make sure you're getting enough magnesium to make sure your transit time is adequate. That's a big problem. And it's not a problem yet because most people haven't been on it for over a year. Right. You stay on for over a year, you're going to have a problem. So,
yeah. Again, it's just thinking through back to we talked about being kids, even as adults. Are we even thinking about our decisions, beyond this thing that we're doing today for the results that we want today? Do we have a plan?
It's a big problem for a lot of people. So I get it. I'm not against Ozempic, but you should also have as you say, a very, very well thought out strategy to maintain your health on it and integrate yourself when you come off it, because you're not going to stay on for the rest of your life. It will have negative health effects.
Yeah. And, you know, not to talk about Ozempic too much, but I have friends who are doctors who are actually saying, like, for a lot of people, this is going to save them from heart disease. It's going to save them from diabetes. It's going to
cause a whole slew of other problems.
Yeah. So so it's kind of this double-edged sword, but it still needs to be managed properly. It's not a cure-all through this one thing. It needs to be done as part of a larger protocol, a larger strategy to make sure that you can reintegrate into I'm going to say, no, I don't like using the word normal, but, you know, to a manageable and maintainable lifestyle.
This comes back to the thing that we spoke about before we started recording.
We had such a good conversation.
It starts
before we
with our
recorded.
children.
Yes.
Because when you're a kid, you're learning that, hey, when you're stressed or when you're hungry or when whatever's happening in your life, go eat some sugar. Go eat, have a bad day, have some ice cream. Like, oh, and now you mean you're paying the consequences now that you're an adult because your habits are like, I'm gonna self-medicate with sugar. Guess what? So the problem you're trying to solve started 30 years ago.
Right.
So as you're a parent right now, take responsibility for your kid's life and feed them protein and fat for the most of the time, right?
Yeah.
And if your kids only get a taste for that from they're young, that's all they're going to want to eat.
Yeah.
I think humans want to eat proteins and fats and salt, but when you get a taste for sugar, like, especially in the first couple of years of life, like now your taste bud has been developed to that. And there's a genetic component there as well. Some people have genetic predisposition to liking sugars and fats more, but I think it comes back to what I think will become a big part of my life in the future is like, how do we teach parents how to support their kids eating more effectively? So every one of my guys is like, I'll pay you whatever you want to teach my wife and my kids how to eat. They're like, doesn't matter what it costs. Like, I need you to come in and teach these people how to.
And then the wife will say, well, sure, if you want to bring in a chef and do all the cooking.
Totally. But it doesn't have to be hard, right?
It doesn't have to be hard. It's true.
No,
you have to just learn the basics and then apply it, you know.
So I have this whole like community of people who kind of banded around my 7-minute muscle meals. And I've got this like long list of meals that I make in 7 minutes. It's 7 to 10 minutes, but it's like, it's not as long as you think. And you're making these incredibly delicious meals that you're like 7 minutes. I'm like, yeah, it's really easy if you learn how to do it. So I encourage people to lose their stories around how long it takes and actually try. And it's not gonna happen overnight.
I'm gonna have to, because I'm one of those people. As a grown woman, I think food, meal prep is my biggest.
So you need 3 to 5. So I need less meals because I can eat the same thing every day. Some people need 5 meals that you can prepare in under 10 minutes. Find them, right? Whatever that is for you. A roster. Yeah. And you're like, you always have something on hand, prepare. And you're just like, I have these meals that I can make in under 10 minutes that really are simple.
Yeah.
And that's all it takes. You know, I've got a long list of them, but.
We're going to dig those up on the internet because I do think it's a major sticking point for a lot of
I'll send you my cooking videos.
Please do. And I'm going to put a timer on to see
you can.
if it
I do in the
takes me
video.
7 minutes.
Yeah, it does. As long as the meat is thawed, it's 7 minutes. Yeah.
That's fair. I know we don't have a lot of time left, but I have rapid fire questions for you, which I know will be very hard for you because
I never answer one word answers.
You are never, but you're going to do it. I have all the faith in the world in you. But I'll start with a longer answer one. We've danced around this topic a little bit, and I love having this topic conversation with my guests, but to you, what is the definition of success?
Well, I think I mentioned before, I believe it's living in alignment with your values. Yeah. So integrity to your values, right? That's for me what's most important. Because if I'm living in alignment with my values, I wake up every day knowing I made decisions based on the right criteria. It shouldn't be unconscious. It should be conscious most of the time. I'm like, this is what I value, and this is what's important to me. And I'm going to make sure that my actions and behaviors are in alignment with that. And are they always? No. But most often, right? Most often I'm pretty much in alignment. I have bad days like everyone else. You know, there's days where you're a little bit tired, you're a little bit crusty, and you're like, oh.
You crusty?
Yeah. I had one last week, and I was like, oh, that was a special one. It
was extra crusty that day. Yeah. I mean, again, I encourage people listening to this, go figure out your values. Make a list with your people in your life that matter and your different groups of life stakeholders.
Yeah. So there's a trick. There's a hack. We have 3 currencies, right? We have our time, we have our attention, and we have our money. Those are your 3 currencies. So you ask yourself, well, how am I investing my 3 currencies now? And in general, that will demonstrate how you unconsciously spend your value, or you value life, right? You may want to change that. So most people are like, oh, I want to make millions of dollars, but they spend their money on trinkets instead of investments, right? So sometimes we think our values are one thing, but in reality, you're not living in alignment with that. So it's not just what do I value, it's what do I demonstrate that's actually coming true. And so that will give you an idea of what your current value hierarchy is. Like, where do I spend most of my money? Like Starbucks and entertainment, or so that'll give you an idea of what you value. And so it's on my family, it's on my food, it's on my entertainment, it's on my investments, on my home. That'll be your values. And so you're like, am I happy with that? Like, is that who I want to be in this world, or do I want to demonstrate that in a different way? Maybe I want to invest more of my time into learning, and maybe I want to invest more of my time into my family. And you got to be intentional about that, and then plan your weeks accordingly, right? As you know.
Yeah, I am obsessive about managing my calendar. I have been, even in all my executive roles where I had an executive assistant, I never let anyone touch my calendar so that I could manage it accordingly based on my priorities. And I still do it now. And 24 hours in a day, they're all usable. But to me, it was managing, even doing things that I knew I'd need a certain amount of energy for, a certain amount of clarity for, or anyways, managing a calendar to align with where my values were, where my priorities were. I mean, people are trying to find a way to bring this to life. Well, look at your calendar. Look at your bank account.
There's where you can coach me.
Right. Oh, really? Okay.
Well, so I've, for the longest time, had a lady who ran my calendar. Oh. And then she's no longer with me, and since COVID. And my calendar is like not the way it needs to be run for my level of...
I'm good at that.
Yeah.
I can help you with that. You can cook 7-minute meals for me, and I will help you with your calendar. I don't know if this is the right word for this, but what's your favorite treat, your favorite cheat meal, what's your biggest indulgence?
So you're going to think I'm the biggest dork.
No, you're not going to answer this in a fun way. I know it.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not a fun way for
like
you.
If you tell me like broccoli.
No.
Okay.
It's almost as bad.
Okay.
So people, I'm going to bring this up. So this sounds like a cop-out answer, but anyone knows me, this is the truth. Olive oil is my biggest.
Olive oil.
50% of my calories every day come from olive oil. But you've never had the level of olive oil. So I belong to like olive oil clubs that import the highest quality olive oil.
I mean, I've been to Italy and I've had really good olive oil, but I don't want to live off of it.
I'm going to send you some.
Do you like rub it on your skin too? Okay.
No,
I
just consume it.
Okay. Olive oil.
It's my indulgence. It's when you find good olive oil, it's not like anything you've ever had before.
Like I'll put it on bread and balsamic.
Yeah. So sometimes I'll put it on rice cakes. Sometimes I get some sourdough. It's my favorite thing. It's unbelievable.
I liked you better when you brought me chocolate, but
I'll still bring you chocolate. But so don't judge it until you've tried it. And so there's just this one.
I will admit that there are grades to olive oil. Like when you taste good olive oil, the flavor, like I love butter and I can taste margarine a mile away. I can taste, there's something like a beautiful fatty richness that I love about butter and good olive oil, but I still don't find it.
But even the olive oil you will get at the highest quality olive oil stores is not the same as the stuff I'm getting. It's like at my house within 4 weeks of being pressed. It's unbelievable. 4 to 6 weeks. It's unbelievable. I'll bring you some.
All right. Well, we'll keep that in mind. If your life was a book, what chapter are you in, and what's the next chapter?
Interesting. I think I'm in the intermission right now.
The intermission. Please put your book down and go for a rest. Yeah.
Yeah. What chapter am I in? I'm on the second mountain, I would say. So I believe that there's multiple mountains in our lives. And the first mountain many of us climb are first, speaking to many of the men I speak to, the first mountain is often about optics. It's about the external. It's about what am I accomplishing? Who am I becoming? Acquiring wealth and significance. And then many men
external significance.
External significance. And then you get to the top of that mountain, you look around and you go, oh, this isn't it. So then you descend down and you're kind of on the next mountain. And the next mountain for me is an internal journey. It's like discovering who I am and assessing whether or not I'm showing up at my highest and best every day and making decisions based on my highest values, not someone else's highest values, which is a big thing in our world, as you know. So I'd say the second mountain is where maybe the base of the second mountain right now is where I am.
Well, no, you're on the lookout deck of the first mountain, so you're not at the bottom of the second mountain. You're a little bit up.
Sure, yeah.
Right? You're going to leverage the climb you just did.
Right. There's another one. It's much bigger. Maybe it's not bigger, but maybe more fulfilling for me.
Yeah.
Whereas the first one is something I needed, I think.
Yeah.
This one's about, just,
You want it.
For me, it's a balance of, chop wood and carry water, so to speak, which is like the pursuit of goals. Like you still have to live in this world. You still have to accomplish things and make money and do those fun things. But there also has to be a dynamic balance of sitting in stillness with self and really identifying who I am, and that all those things I'm doing externally are in alignment with who I am. Okay. That's what I call the warrior and the monk, right? The warrior goes out and pursues and accomplishes and gets what he needs, comes back to the family. The monk is sitting as the stillness, right? The calm in the eye of the storm, identifying who I am, making sure that I'm doing everything that I should be doing.
You're not going to believe this when I say this, but I asked this question to a client a couple weeks ago, and she gave me the mountain analogy that you just gave me. Different words, different places. Like she's at the lookout of the first mountain right now, enjoying her climb and being proud of herself and really settling into what she's accomplished, getting ready for what she sees as the next one, and talking about all of the skills and shortcuts and learnings and things that she learned that will propel her up that second mountain faster. I can't believe you just said that. That's really funny.
Yeah, I've yet to take time to to reflect on, I did some cool stuff.
Yeah. It's funny that you said dwell. There's the truth right there.
Right.
Yeah. No, she said, I'm just enjoying the view.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we often do that.
No, I mean, not yet.
No.
I have at certain points, like throughout my career, there was points where I was like, I can't believe I just did that. Like walking on the Mr. Olympia stage for the first time. So I walked on the stage and I was standing on stage and remembering the first time I was at the Olympia, I was 17. So I was posing to myself sitting in the back row. It's like, there's some kid in the back row there who this is his dream. I'm like, man, you can do it. So it was really energizing for me to pose to that kid who was me. Yeah.
It's interesting how we have to reframe those moments of pause to recharge and refocus or refuel. Could you imagine going on a road trip and never stopping for gas? You could be headed to the greatest destination of your life but never stopping to refuel or to... I'm constantly working on celebrating, finding ways to celebrate, finding moments to celebrate. I suspect you're not a big celebrator.
But I am,
yourself.
but it's daily, right? It's like a daily reflection and living that energy daily when possible. I try not to get pulled in too deeply into the weeds of I'm not present. I'm not, I'm doing something other than what I should be doing. Yeah, I think it's more of it, for me, I'm not perfect at it, but it's an attempt to have a daily reflection on a life well lived.
That's true.
Am I doing who I need to be doing today?
I like that. Where can people find you?
Most people would know me.
Besides all over the internet.
No. So I've really been kind of having a hiatus.
Yeah.
And I've loved it, and I'm ready to come back. And I think it's just been, sifting through the noise and the mud and what am I bringing to the world that's useful? Because it's not muscle, right? As you'll know, that's how everyone knows me.
Right.
But it's such a small percentage of who I am. I can build muscle for anyone.
Right. But there's lessons in doing that you've taken with you.
Yeah, but I'm still really good at that.
Of course.
But it's not all that I am. So Muscle Intelligence would be where most people know me. MuscleIntelligence.com, Muscle Intelligence Podcast. But now, as you would have seen, I'm evolving this podcast mission to leadership, longevity, and legacy.
Yes.
And legacy doesn't necessarily mean, some people think a legacy is like the name on the back of the jersey, it's all about me and my family. And I actually dislike that, because what you'll notice in the world is there's a lot of people preparing for something, but they're preparing for themselves and their family. I'm like, hold on, how do we involve more people? I could go buy a farm that's a few thousand acres and have a place, that's like a compound and nobody else is allowed in. And what purpose does that serve? Because I'm going to die in 50 years and nobody's going to know. And I'm going to be happy with my tree, but how do we bring more people along on that journey? So legacy is what mission are we solving in this life? And who are we bringing along with us? And how can we make it the biggest mission possible? Yeah. I love him or hate him. I love Elon Musk. I'm the guy's so crazy that he would come along and say, I'm going to go to Mars. I'm going to change the automobile industry. Right? This is the type of thing people should be doing or striving for. Every man needs a mission. Every woman probably needs a mission.
Yeah, we do. it's your focus on leadership, longevity, and legacy resonate with me in a big way. I come at them differently in the work that I do and the life that I've lived. But the legacy piece is something we're going to have to circle back to next time, because I think, again, it's trying to think further ahead in life that a lot of people aren't necessarily capable of doing. I think it's thinking about beyond yourself, and to your point, how many people you can bring with you, as opposed to just how you're setting yourself or your family up for success or whatever that might look like in the future. And the sacrifices that come with maybe not expanding that out to a larger community. So we'll talk about that next time, because I'm equally as passionate about that. I just come at it a different way in the work that I do, and but certainly think it's important.
I look forward to hearing about it.
So thank you for being here. It's very
Thank
good
you.
to see you. Let's not wait 10 years to see each other again.
I'm going to
I know
schedule
we
it.
talk often,
I'm going
but
to call your people soon to
people, okay. Please do that. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to see you, and I love you.
I love you too.
Take care.